So good morning and welcome to this presentation of AmbuBus. I'm Andy Herman with Cisco. It is my pleasure to serve as a moderator and host of this event. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Tom Moran, the Executive Director of the All Hazards Consortium.
Andy, thank you. This morning we're going to have a 30 to 40 minute recorded webinar featuring a solution that has come out of one of our corporate stakeholders within the consortium. For those of you that are not aware, the All Hazards Consortium is a nonprofit run by the Mid-Atlantic and Northeastern states from New York down to North Carolina. It focuses on both state and local government needs in the areas of homeland security and emergency management. This webinar is really an educational tool to help make folks aware not just of the solutions available, but how government is implementing this, which is the most important thing. Our focus is on the government portion of this. So with that, we'll go around the horn here and have folks introduce themselves. On the phone with us today, we have David Long. David, if you would introduce yourself and where you're from, please.
Sure. My name is David Long, residing in the Hampton Roads area, southeastern Virginia, and I work for the Hampton Roads Metropolitan Medical Response System.
Very good. And also Amit Kapoor. Amit, if you would introduce yourself, please.
My name is Amit Kapoor. I'm president of FirstLine Technology, and we're the solution provider of the AmbuBus.
So today we're going to focus on regional catastrophic evacuation capability. This is a little broader than that, actually, but this is a very creative solution that solves a very big problem. So with that, if we can go to our next slide. What is AmbuBus? There's some graphics on the screen, and I've invited Amit to give us a brief summary of what the solution is. Then we can kind of jump into how government learned about it and is utilizing it. Amit?
Sure. The AmbuBus is a transport conversion kit. Basically, simply to put it, it's a bus conversion kit that enables school buses or transit vehicles to become mass casualty transport vehicles to evacuate during hurricanes, earthquakes, natural or man-made disasters. It's a quick retrofit kit that can be put in as a permanent installation or a temporary installation, and the system it's used to basically enhance regional preparedness. Hampton Roads is an example of the regional preparedness in the Tidewater area. And it's basically there's limited resources available in terms of ambulances around the country and around regions. And this is to augment the local response, so they're not tying up their local ambulances for the essential care casualties. This is to evacuate casualties to nursing homes or hospitals and basically build upon the ambulance capability. They're using disasters or terrorism incidents, and just like the Hampton Roads area, they're using them through mutual aid. And David can go into that in more detail. Okay.
Andy, if we can go to our next slide. And then can you talk for a minute, about its portability, how this has moved around? We've got some graphics on the screen now, but if you could take a minute and just talk to this for a second before we get into where it's deployed.
Sure. And to take one step back on the AmbuBus side, FirstLine Technology developed this after Hurricane Katrina. During Hurricane Katrina, there were many buses that were underutilized or not utilized, and that were just left, primarily school buses, that could have been used to evacuate nursing homes and hospitals. A lot of the people were just told to hunker down, and from our response that we delivered 35,000 cots. One of the questions we asked to our customer who was down there during Katrina was, what was your biggest issue for evacuation? They came back to us and said to us, it's getting out the casualties, the non-ambulatory patients who can't walk and can't self-evacuate. How do we get them out? And we went back and started designing a conversion kit that basically it can go into any type of vehicle, be it a school bus, transit bus, because you never know what situation you're in and what tools you have, what vehicles you might have. So it's basically utilizing any kind of vehicle of opportunity. Like I said, it's a bus conversion kit, and the portability of it, if you look in the picture, you see that's a crate that can be stackable inside of a warehouse, caches. It's a 72-inch by 34 by 34 crate, 1,000 pounds. So it can be pre-positioned before a hurricane or a disaster moved around to wherever it needs to. So if the Gulf State area region or the Hampton Roads area, even up in New York, the Hamptons up on Long Island, these crates can be pushed out to those units, and school buses can be converted on the fly to evacuate out the nursing homes. It's a just-in-time configuration, so you can configure it however you need to. The AmbuBus has a capability of handling up to 18 patients. We normally say you'd want to utilize 12 patients, and that's just for caregivers to be on the bus at the same time. And you can customize it on the fly. David has an example of that as well. He has done he's done a very good job in using it as a full-time conversion, not as a just-in-time. And what they've done, and he'll go into more details, is they permanently configured over school buses to utilize them in, everyday usage as well as disaster events. And you can also use the AmbuBus freestanding, so for sheltering and for staging. So again, it's so portable that the VA, for example, the Veteran Affairs, they're using them to push out for H1N1 when to augment surge capacity in hospitals. When they run out of hospital beds because they get an influx of about 100 patients that come in and they need isolation, they can stage these in a quarantined area and use them for bunk sheltering for their patients who are there. It comes in a ruggedized. Yep.
So Amit, these can be standalone in tents or buildings, or they could be housed within a vehicle, like you've shown here.
Exactly. And one of the crucial, money is tight, and one of the biggest issues is that if we made a system or a kit that could only use one way, inside of a vehicle or inside of a bus, it's not so cost effective, because that's maybe a once in a blue moon kind of incident that may occur. It's more practical if we made a system that could be used freestanding and could be used for sheltering. We have the state of Mississippi, for example. They're utilizing it inside the warehouses to house their first responders and bunk their first responders during disasters. So there's a lot more usage to it than just inside of a bus. Good.
Very good. Okay. Are there, what logistics are involved in deploying this?
The AmbuBus, it's about 1,000 pounds. All the tools necessary for assembling the AmbuBus kit inside of a vehicle or in a freestanding format, it has a toolkit that's included. And the toolkit comes with everything you would need from socket wrenches, and we use standard nuts and bolts on the system. It's a big erector set that comes together. And it assembles in approximately 2 hours with seats taken out. It depends on the bus configuration of how long the seats might take to come out. If they're bolted down, it takes a little bit longer. Some of the newer buses have quick release seats, so it's easier to take seats out. So it takes approximately 2 hours. Maintenance costs on it are very low because there are very limited moving parts on it. It's very easy to maintain. The toolkit does come with a can of WD-40. Comes with duct tape. You can use duct tape to basically put together quite a bit of things, and a rubber mallet.
So it's some assembly required, but it's basically self-contained.
Exactly.
Very good. Very good.
Yep.
Okay. Andy, if we can go to our next slide, please. Let's talk for a minute about who has successfully deployed this. Where is this solution already up and running? This isn't a guinea pig type of operation. You've obviously had some success. Can you talk for a minute about where this has been deployed already?
Sure, and the deployment list is growing every day. But statewide, we have states such as Alabama. They were one of our first customers. Alabama went ahead and, through grant funding, purchased 210 kits for the entire state, and they gave them out to their emergency management teams and their public health teams. Georgia's another group who purchased 40 kits in 2008, and they just placed an order yesterday for another 15 kits for this upcoming hurricane season. Mississippi is another state. They statewide, they got 14, and we have a continuing contract with them for 14 every year for the next 5 years.
Most of these deployed on buses like that, or some of these freestanding or other configurations?
Yeah, it's a mix. So, for example, Mississippi, what they've done is they've taken all 14 and permanently installed them. they did a cooperative agreement with the school districts, and they put these buses, the school district utilized the kits and put them in permanently into buses. Georgia, what they've done, they've just cached it. They put them away in a warehouse, for that hurricane preparedness.
Okay, very good.
And we have local metro areas too, Beaumont, Dallas, those are the Texas, but we have other places in Texas. Texas is a big state that they've been trying to field out multiple cities near the coastal areas. Hampton Roads, and Dave is going to talk about that. Stafford, Virginia is also a customer. They did a permanent installation. And these are pending deliveries that we've talked about here on the slide. San Francisco, California, they're looking at earthquake, but mostly also wildfire issues.
Is there, if somebody's interested, is this information on your website if they want to see what other applications are being used for that?
It is, and we also have contact list, so they can contact the customers directly to get information on how they're utilizing it.
Excellent. Okay. Let me pivot for a second, and if we go to our next slide, now we're going to kind of look at, get some input from David from the government's perspective. So from that, David, could you talk for a second, what is Hampton Roads MMRS for those that may not be familiar with this around the country that may be hearing this for the first time?
Sure. When you look at the MMRS program, it's important to understand that it's a federal grant program. Basically, it's run out of the Department of Homeland Security. Really targets the 124 to 128 largest jurisdictions across the country through the program, which basically began back in 1996. We had 4 qualifying cities that met the criteria, and they were the cities of Chesapeake, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Newport News. Through some foresight and actually great leadership in this region, there was a decision made very early in our process to make this a regional process more so than just these 4 individual localities. So Hampton Roads has a footprint that includes 16 cities and counties that make up the Hampton Roads Planning District. So we, as a region, used AmbuBus as a solution to some of our solutions, I guess, if you will, to some of our problems that we have faced both historically and then from a pre-planning perspective for future events.
Very, very good. Can you talk for a minute about the coordination that's involved? You're defining region as a number of jurisdictions, not states, but other locales, if you will. And in some cases, it might even be states. Can you talk for a minute just about kind of the regional coordination that's involved for this type of process to get this?
Sure. Well, the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission is a small entity of folks that were put together through grant funds and et cetera to kind of oversee governmental processes, again, from a regional perspective. So I guess it's the equivalent of getting up on the balcony and off of the dance floor. And with that in mind, you need to make sure, or we needed to make sure, that you have the right stakeholder groups represented so that as you move forward in processes, that you have the appropriate buy-in. So the CAOs, those leading administrative officers out of each jurisdiction, had a seat at the table, and they were instrumental in designing how we were going to plan for disasters. Again, Amit had mentioned, natural disaster or man-made, through terrorist type of events. So through that process, we have several different work groups that also work closely with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. MMRS is just one of those. We have a UASI certification as well. So we have what we call a UOG, but urban areas working group that also oversees. So the different planning entities share information between one another, and one of the things that we decided to tackle was our ability to move patients. Just as Amit had mentioned, post Katrina, and the collaboration and the cooperation that we have for, again, 16 jurisdictions is actually quite impressive.
Wow. Yeah, that's not easy. We totally have respect for that. Next question is really focused on, who are the first responders that are involved in your organization? Can you speak to that for just a second?
Sure, and I would say that the way to look at this is that when we talk about these 16 jurisdictions, each jurisdiction has law enforcement agencies, fire agencies, EMS agencies, and et cetera. And those are true first responders. And then we've also, through our MMRS program, put in a regional response team, which we call the Hampton Roads Metropolitan Medical Strike Team, which is it's a 47-member team, but we have depth to make sure that it can get out the door and respond to provide some relief. One of the things that we quickly identified is that we have the medical resources to treat victims of a mass casualty type of an event. But again, our problem was getting them moved. I'm sure that most people can appreciate that a lot of times if you have a large enough event, you deal with medical surge issues so that your hospitals are packed to the seam, so to speak, and you may be transporting distances further away, which again required us to look at how we were going to move large number of folks greater distances and get the largest bang for the buck. So this is where AmbuBus more or less came into play for us as a solution to meet a need.
Very good. So just kind of off script, you heard about this solution through your members? Actually,
no. I am also a member of a federal response team. I'm part of Virginia 1 Disaster Medical Assistance Team. So each year for the past five or 6 years, I've attended what used to be the NDMS conference and then turned into the HHS Summit, the Health and Human Services Summit. And I actually met Amit and Randy at one of those conferences.
Oh, you basically heard about this through a meeting that was held. That's great. That's the importance of meetings. Very good. And last question I have for you: what's your background, David? Where did you come up through emergency management or fire, or what's your background?
I'm actually a lieutenant paramedic with the Chesapeake Fire Department here in the Hampton Roads region. I've been with them for about 17 years. I had one of those later in life experiences with adult education and went on and completed a bachelor's and master's degree, and through that process kind of fell into this job with the MMRS program. It was supposed to be a 1-year federal grant deal, and I'm in my 6th year, if that says anything.
Very good. Very good. Andy, if we can go to our next slide. Okay. This is lessons learned from Katrina and other disasters. Identified certainly special needs, and the transport of that is a big shortfall. It's a very tough issue facing all the states within the consortium and probably around the country. Does your organization face similar challenges? I mean, can you talk to that for just a minute?
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. One of the things about the Hampton Roads regions is the number of waterways that cut through our area, so the number of bridges and tunnels and things of that nature. So it doesn't take too long to find yourself isolated or stuck, as the case may be. And since we do have an influx of traffic from North Carolina for people coming north, it doesn't take long to overwhelm our interstate system and kind of landlock things. So sheltering in place is an important concept for us. But one of the issues still, like Amit had said earlier, is some of these patients aren't able to self-evacuate or are immobile. And so one of the things that we are working on in concert with this program is our medical special needs sheltering capability. And the bus plays a role as then it can go out to our identified medical special needs patients. We can pick them up in the bus and bring them to the shelter.
Very good. What capabilities are you getting, from AmbuBus throughout the region from a response standpoint? Can you talk to that for a second?
Sure, and I will tell you that we chose, as I'm sure most people can appreciate, to look at how we best leverage the limited amount of funds that we do get to get the greatest bang for the buck. So having them sitting in a warehouse shelved didn't seem like much of a solution to our problems. So we started looking at things more globally to determine how could this be used every day. And I will tell you that the choice to install permanently started opening up floodgates, if you will, possibilities. So yes, it's installed permanently in our vehicles such that we can use it as a mass casualty response vehicle daily for events that may happen. We look at it as a possibility to evacuate, and in fact, I want to say it was in January, we had a very nasty nor'easter where we had flooding occur in a couple of our neighborhoods, where we actually used the bus to evacuate people from those neighborhoods and get them into a shelter. We use it for rehab purposes for our public safety folks. So days that it's really hot, we can convert our stretcher system inside the bus to turn it into bench seating. And because we've installed air conditioning in the bus and things of that nature, I can use it as a rehabilitation vehicle for those folks for some duration. Then we started looking at issues like fires and things of that nature that will displace people from their homes at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's 30 degrees or it's raining outside, as a method to shelter people, from the environment during these periods of displacement until we can get people like the American Red Cross involved and family or friends, and to pick them up. And then we've also had some conversation with the OCME's office, the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, about mass fatalities and being able to use this as a holding site for our fatalities up until the point that they can get processed by the OCME.
Very good. Andy, if we can go to the next slide. I crack up every time I see more acronyms. And David, you've addressed really kind of the first one, I think, the first question I have, which was, have you deployed it? Maybe here you can speak to how do you get it enabled? How do you get it enabled and deployed during a disaster? Can you speak to that for a minute?
Sure. Currently, we have four units that have been built. We're in the process of building out our next 4. And as I mentioned earlier, we just got the funding set aside for the 9th. But as we do these actually belong to one of the fire departments in the 16 jurisdictions. So it becomes part of their everyday first response cache and is catted into their dispatch systems. So just like what we had with our deployment back in January, we're using a mass casualty designator. The number that follows it usually indicates the station it's assigned to. So in our case, there was a request for mass casualty 6, to respond to, a location within the city of Chesapeake.
Very good. And if we can jump to our next slide, please. 2 questions on this one, David. One is, how has deploying this solution kind of helped your preparedness? And the second question is, what ESS, emergency support function, do you address, by using AmbuBus?
Well, actually, we use them all. So, again, and I think that's one of those things that's important about our approach to this particular solution, which was again, multifunctional, because I don't want to buy 4 different tools if I can use one, and stretch my dollar as far as I can stretch it. But the thing I will tell you, about a true mass casualty event for what we've experienced, fire and EMS agencies, is that you have a multi-vehicle accident that results in 8 patients. In the day before safety became a big issue, you could probably fit 2 patients in the back of an ambulance, and you're going to tie up 4 ambulances. Well, I use the city of Chesapeake as an example. For somebody who has 12 ambulances on the street every day, you just took 4 of them off the street, and that's a pretty significant impact. But now today, with the new, what they're called safe medics, to ensure that for rollovers and if ambulances become involved in accidents and things of that nature, most only have the capability of carrying a single patient. So if I have a single patient and I again have those same 8 patients, I just took 8 ambulances off the street, I'm down to 4. Well, this AmbuBus solution for us allows us to deploy that vehicle and essentially transport all of the patients, and I can release all of my ambulances.
Okay.
But at the same time, when you look at these other functions, like we said before, we will continue to use them to support our medical special needs issues. We have here in the region had two hospitals. Well, one hospital closed permanently. One hospital built a new facility and relocated. And we were stacking up in the neighborhood of 40 ambulances to transfer patients from one facility to the next. In the future, this has already been put into the plan that if we have nursing home evacuations or relocations as well as hospital relocations, that the 8 buses and now potentially the 9th bus is going to allow us, a capability, to limit the number of ambulances involved in that process.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're still discovering uses of this, which is very common, and I think it's great. So you obviously cut across a number of ESFs with this, which is great. Andy, can we go to our next slide, please? Let's talk about funding for a minute. How did the MMRS group acquire the funding, and can you talk about that for a minute as far as your funding process?
Like with any of the grant programs, you need to make sure that the equipment is identified either on the authorized equipment list or standardized equipment list, which this was, which made it easy for us, just a green light issue. And then as we, do our budget planning, it was just a matter of determining how many we were going to attempt to purchase through a particular grant year, and in competition, obviously, with other needs. And then we were able to prioritize that. So for our purchasing needs, we've been able to spread this over 3 grant years to get the vehicles in place that we're going to have here in Hampton Roads.
Were there other products out there like this, or was this kind of a unique solution?
Well, sure. We did research on other products. There's a medical ambulance bus vendor down in North Carolina, I believe. And it's essentially a Cadillac model. So if you got $300,000 laying around to buy a single bus, then you're obviously blessed as a region. And I'd make the purchase if I had it. But knowing that you have limited funds and you're looking for a capability, with the jurisdictions donating a bus for the conversion kit for the things that we've done to it, specifically. For Hampton Roads, with Amit and Randy's help, we were able to turn that into about a $30,000 purchase. So we were able to, put more vehicles in place to get, again, that greater bang for the buck. Sure.
So I take it the Rolls-Royce version had a little extras, probably some cup holders and things, right?
Yeah, but things like also some headaches that some people may not anticipate. Because lots of times a medical ambulance bus is going to be recognized as a licensed vehicle that's going to have to go through all kinds of inspections and so on and so forth. And, so it isn't always, nicer. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Right. Amit, question for you. How have some of the other jurisdictions funded their procurements for this?
Sure. On the state levels, for example, Georgia and Mississippi, they've used a lot of ASPR grants, the HHS funding for hospital preparedness grants that are available. There's quite a bit of number of grants that are. UASC has a number of grants available. And the responder knowledge base, rkb.us, that's a great source for information of what grants are applicable for the AmbuBus itself. And like David was saying, is there's already an AEL, SEL number, so it is an authorized equipment that can be purchased using grant funding. And and what's happening over the next couple of years is who knows where grant funding will go, and pushing that dollar further. That's our key with this product. Like David said, you could buy a $300,000 ambulance bus, but I don't know too many departments who have $300,000 to spend on that for a capability like what we're looking for with the AmbuBus. But there's quite a bit of grants out there.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I ask about other solutions is there's rarely one silver bullet, so that's why I was curious that if there were other things out there that may do other things, but that's good. And if we can go to our next slide.
Sure.
Okay. This kind of speaks to, and I wasn't sure who was going to take this on as far as the answer, but we talked about stakeholders, and maybe Amit. I don't know if you or David wanted to take this one on, but
I can talk about it briefly. The stakeholders that are in place. And David talked about this. When the teams that he's working with, it cuts across public health, emergency management, law enforcement, and we're now working with, for example, agencies like the Veteran Affairs for all their hospitals around the country. And there's a VA hospital in the Hampton Roads area, and what they are very appreciative of. We talk about interoperability, but we kind of push that towards communications, interoperability for communication, but we miss the fact of there needs to be interoperability between just plain old equipment. So if Hampton Roads MMRS has the same system that the VA hospital at the Hampton Roads area has, it makes it very easy there's synergies there that makes it, when they show up on scene, they're not looking at a new piece of equipment they've never seen before, and it just makes it easier to work. We work with a lot of federal agencies. Air Force is one of them for aeromedical evacuation and planning with school districts. And David, you want to talk about how you got the bus in your partnership with the school district?
Sure. One of the things we recognized was that, as with anything, you introduce something as a new concept. There's a heart value system issue, so there is going to be that skepticism. So we tried to take a little bit different approach of let's build a model and let's use that to sell it instead of trying to talk through it. And so we approached the city of Chesapeake, and our fleet manager just picked up the phone and called the school division and said, "Hey, do you have any buses that you're getting ready to get rid of? You'd be willing to donate to the fire department?" And we found that essentially, if jurisdictions were willing to make that call, almost every school district has donated a bus to their fire department. I think the most expensive has been $1 to do just a TDA, paperwork issue to change ownership. But once we got the bus, we built the Chesapeake bus first, and we took it to a regional emergency managers meeting and demoed it. And by the end of that meeting, of course, everybody wanted one.
Very good. So it sounds like it's a process to educate stakeholders, which is always worth the time. It's not fast, but it's certainly worth the time. And obviously, from here, you've touched on a number of people that would be interested in stuff like this. So let's go down. We got 2 slides left. Let's go to our next slide here. Amit, talk for a second about FirstLine and just real briefly, and your involvement in the consortium, and then we can wrap it up.
Very quickly, FirstLine Technology, we're headquartered out here in Chantilly, Virginia, Northern Virginia, and we have an open warehouse. We always have open houses, and we actually have AmbuBus kits here that are installed. We have a demo school bus that we take around the country, but we welcome government agencies to give us a call and say, hey, I want to come over to Chantilly, or we can bring the bus out to you. and demo it and show you how the kit works. We do R&D here, and we do product development right here. And what we're focused on is building, commercial off-the-shelf solutions. And for contracting basis, we are a authorized equipment list on the list, and we have GSA contracts and numerous contracts. But any of that information, they can give us a call or look on our website, and it's available.
Tom, can I add one thing real quick?
Absolutely, Joe.
One thing I want to make clear to everybody who may hear this is FirstLine Technology, particularly Amit and Randy, are very responsive business owners. In fact, I don't know how many times that we've talked on the phone about issues that I would have or recommendations that we would make based on how we were using the product, and they've designed things, for us as we described it to them. One of the things that comes to mind, Amit, is that mini support legs so that we could turn, the stretchers into bench seating and, provide some support to those stretchers. So it really is a process that, as people look at, hey, this might work better or this may help me do this instead, they're willing to take that on and produce it for you.
David, have you had, you mentioned some adjustments. Have you had to do any retrofitting or do things on the fly?
Absolutely. We normally leave our buses configured in the 12 stretcher configuration with the ability to add in the other 6 essentially on the fly. But we also, for converting into a mass evacuation, can transform the bus in about 5 minutes to accommodate 20 to 30 patient seating for evacuation purposes.
Very good. Okay, because I know with special needs, there's ramps needed, wheelchairs, there's all kinds of stuff. I was curious how adaptable.
Well, Amit developed that, and we actually bought that as a solution for loading purpose. So whether you're loading a wheelchaired patient or whether you're walking a stretchered patient into the bus, that ramp is there and in place. And they've actually developed a device that'll allow you to lock wheelchairs, in place in the system. And we've actually accommodated that so we can handle, I think it's 6 wheelchaired patients, locked in place.
Excellent. Andy, let's go to our next slide real quick so we can wrap up. Amit, another topic that seems to be raising its head on this is pet care. The tremendous issues with pets and people not wanting to leave them, especially when it's their own. So something to be thinking about if you're not already thinking about it. On the screen here is the contact information for David Long. David, I want to thank you for participating here. Also, Amit's contact information is on there. I want to thank you both and Andy for helping us put this together. This will be posted up as a link for distribution. So people click on the link and they can come back and hear this recording. So with that, we can wrap this up. David, any final comments here before we sign off?
I would say that if you have questions, from a purchaser perspective, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay. And Amit, your information's up there as well. Again, this is an effort brought to you by the States of the All Hazards Consortium. What we're trying to do is educate both sides of not just the problem side, but the solution side as well. In the future, be looking to more of these types of things as we continue to drive out some of the solutions and requirements that the states are facing. So with that, David, thank you. Amit, thank you. And Andy, that's it for now. Thank you again for your support. And we'll talk to everyone real soon.
Thank you.